Welcome back to Round the Game, an honest conversation with people connected to the game with unique experiences. Today, really love my guest here, a fellow Celtics fan, as you can see by his background, a contributor over at Fansided, talking about all things Timberwolves, and the host of the Castles Cast, Eamon Castles. I really appreciate being on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm excited to be part of this series. It's a really cool idea.
Absolutely. I was on the Castles Cast not too long ago, and I knew I wanted to bring you back. So I was able to do this. But for my audience, for people who may be new to both of us potentially, I kind of want to know who you are as a basketball fan. How did we get here? Did you fall in love with the game and then become a Celtics fan? Was it vice versa? Let me know.
I guess going back to when I was about 7 years old in first grade, that's sort of like my initial memories of basketball. Just sort of playing the game of basketball. I mean, super low level, obviously, first grade, just like rec basketball kind of deal. But I just remember playing, and then sort of the same time, I remember gravitating towards watching basketball, especially with my dad. He would have games on and stuff like that. So that's sort of how I became a fan of the NBA and really the NFL at the same time as well. Just a super young age, and really as long as I can remember, I've always sort of been a basketball fan. And then with the Celtics specifically, I grew up in New England, so that was always a big thing. But it wasn't really until the 2010 finals, which was late in like first grade, I guess, when I truly became a Celtics fan. Just seeing them go on that run and then ultimately losing to the Lakers in 7 games, I just remember being crushed. And that was really like my first taste of like fandom, and never looked back from there.
You said that in 2010 you were going into first grade?
Yeah, I was in first grade. Yeah,
Jesus Christ, dude. Which means that you were born in what, 2003, 4?
yeah, 2002. So I'm 23. I was seven then. Yeah.
Dude, put me in the dirt. Holy shit.
I
Okay,
mean, I
sorry,
definitely
bro.
feel that. I've heard people say like they started watching basketball in like 2017, 2018. I'm like, damn, that's crazy. But yeah, no.
Sorry, broke character there for a second. It really shook me up a little bit. I'm old now. I'm 31, so I've been around this game for a long time. Just to get into it briefly, there was this guy who played for West Virginia University, played all 4 years, and was really like shaking the mold on what a big is supposed to be. 6'11", guy named Kevin Pittsnoggle. Not only did he shoot a lot of threes, like we saw with Dirk Nowitzki and Andrea Bargnani at the time, but he was making a lot of threes. He was shooting like six 3-pointers a game and was hitting at like a 40% clip. So like really had that thing on him. He entered the 2006 draft, didn't get drafted, and then he signed a summer league contract with the Celtics. And I said, "Yep, that's it. He's a Celtic. I'm a Celtic." And he was employed for them for like 92 days, and that's turned into 20 years of me being a fan. So there are worse ways to get there, I guess, but that was definitely my origin story. So yeah, sorry to, break form there for a second. That really caught me off guard. I do want to ask you about you growing up in New England specifically, because you've made no bones about it on previous podcasts or even on your socials. Even though you grew up in New England, close to Titletown, you were not a Patriots fan. You're a Ravens fan. So how did that happen? Like, was Tom Brady just too good for you, and you got tired of winning so much? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I had a good story. I don't really have like a core memory of like me becoming a Ravens fan. It's just sort of since like that first, second grade range, I just always gravitated towards them for whatever reason. Definitely like one of the first games I remember watching was Ravens Pats, but it's not like that was the first game and I was a Ravens fan ever since. It was just something for whatever reason I always gravitated towards the Ravens. Kind of wish it was a different way, with how much success the Pats have had and how much playoff failures the Ravens have had. But it's unique, and I think gives me a unique perspective on different sports, and yeah, it definitely makes me a little bit less attached to like the whole Boston vibe. And I live 3 hours away from Boston, so it's not like I'm from the city or anything. So I also think that plays a role in it. Definitely something that's a little bit unique to me, and I wish I had a better answer for you there.
Do you like the other, big four sports? Do you watch baseball? Do you watch hockey? Anything like that?
Yeah, baseball a little bit. Hockey pretty minimally. I would say both of them pretty minimally honestly. But yeah, I like the Red Sox and Bruins. But not very invested at all. Honestly, like the Red Sox could go, they could lose every game, and I just wouldn't care. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just never had that same investment. I mean, I guess like during that 2018 World Series run I did, that was super cool to watch and stuff. But ordinarily I'm not watching more than like 10 or 15 Red Sox games a year. And then Bruins was sort of something that came along in college because a lot of my college friends were Bruins fans, but that was something I never like grew up watching. And then now, like with how much basketball I watch, it definitely makes it challenging to keep up with the NHL as well.
I've told other people that like try to pitch me hockey. I love hockey. I really do. I love the physicality of it. I love being on the ice. I love like how important the scoring is. You know, like in basketball, the scores go up to 110 on average, but in hockey, it's like 2 or 3 goals can really separate you. I love that, but it's on the in the exact same time as my favorite sport, and I have to make a decision. Like I want to watch, and if it was on during NFL season, I would watch it, but it's not. So I do think it's a little unfortunate for you, though. I will say that because if you started watching football around that time, around the same time, like 2010, you would have missed the collapse in 2007, where the Pats went 18-1 and lost in the Super Bowl. You would have had 3 rings as a fan post 2010, and you would be able to ride this Drake May high that they're on right now. So really, it could not have been more unfortunate for you.
Yeah, no, I think about that all the time, and especially with how good the Pats are. But I guess I'll say like my college years mostly, other than that 1 year the Pats had where they made the playoffs with Mac Jones, they were pretty bad. So I'll take that one as a win, I guess. But yeah, no, definitely unfortunate to miss out on those 3 Super Bowls. But yeah, like I said, it kind of makes me unique, and it's definitely something I'm proud of to be a Ravens fan. And I think better days are ahead for them, especially with them getting rid of Harbaugh.
Well, I mean, you can only be up from here, right? Like you're already in hell. You can only go up. I have a buddy of mine, AJ, who's also a Ravens fan, and I see him send stuff in the group chat every single time the Ravens lose. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're going through it. I can tell.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I feel like if the Ravens lose, like 90% of the time, it's just like purely in a heartbreaking fashion. So that kind of sucks. But at the same time, I'm like totally numb to it. Even starting out week one where they blew that lead in the final 5 minutes to the Bills. Ordinarily, I would have been pissed, but I had seen so many blown leads really in my lifetime, and especially over the past few years, that I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't even care anymore. And I kind of knew the season was gonna not be great from there. I was like, okay, this is how we're setting up. I didn't expect to miss the playoffs, but it lowered my expectations significantly.
I want to transition into how you're connected to the game, this unique experience that I was talking about. As I mentioned in the intro, you're a writer for Fansided and you're the guy for all things Timberwolves. How did that happen? Did writing come naturally for you? And then what was the connection? How did you get connected with Fansided?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great one. This is probably going to be the question where I spend the most time on. So apologies if I'm a little long-winded here. But really, throughout my life, I kind of knew that I wanted to do sports media, especially NBA media. I mean, really, once I got to an age where I was like, hey, guess what? You're 5'8", you're probably not going to make the NBA. Then I was like, all right, I want to be involved around the game at some level, and that's where I got into this idea of NBA media. But I never really knew what avenue I wanted to go down, if I wanted to do like something like a YouTube channel, podcasting, which I got into later, or writing, which I sort of ultimately landed on. But yeah, I went to college. I was studying sport management. I graduated with sport management as well, but freshman year I was studying sport management, and whenever people would ask me, I'd kind of just be like, yeah, I don't know what I'd want to do, or I would just come up with something. I'd be like, oh, maybe I want to be like an athletic director or like work in PR or something. I had a million different answers my entire freshman year, but I always kind of knew that I wanted to do sports media. I just didn't like have the confidence to tell people, because a lot of times if you say, "Hey, I want to do sports media," people are going to be like, "Really? You think you're going to succeed at that?" or something like that. So that brings me to the summer of my sophomore year of college, when I decided just to start my own NBA website. And it wasn't something that I was like planning for months or anything like that. What really happened was I saw Kenny Beecham's website, Enjoy Basketball. And I was like, wow, that is so dope. I'd love to write for a website like that. I just didn't have the experience at the time. I was like, well, guess what? To get the experience, you got to start somewhere. So I started out writing for my own website. I did that for just over a year, really. And then I was like, well, I should probably make this something that I can actually make a little bit of money from. I wasn't really using social media much at that time for whatever reason. But I found a job with this company called Last Word on Sports, where I was a Celtics writer. I did that for 6 to 8 months, and then I got promoted to an editor position. Coincidentally, at the same time, I was talking to this guy named Ian on LinkedIn, who works for Fansided. I was just reaching out to him for a class, did a short interview with him, and then he was like, "Hey man, I really like your work. I got a chance to read some of your work at Last Word, and would love to hire you as a contributor for Fansided.com." So that's how I got in the door at Fansided.com. I worked there for a little. I still work there, but working there for a little over a year, and then I'm about to graduate college, and I was looking for something more on a full-time basis, and I saw that they had an opening at the Timberwolves site as a site expert. So what that means is daily Timberwolves content, and I applied for it. I ended up getting it literally 24 hours before I graduated. And yeah, that was a super cool opportunity for me, even though I'm not a Timberwolves fan, just to be able to cover a team every single day. And I really had enjoyed working for Fansided throughout that year and a few months that I was working for them before. So yeah, I parlayed that into the site expert role while continuing to be a general contributor for the NBA homepage.
What is it like writing for a team that isn't your favorite team? We've got a couple of mutuals, like our buddy Finn Keel, who is a Bucks fan who also writes for the Bucks, and then Ian and Angelo is a Celtics fan, writes for the Celtics. What is it like taking your like objective bias away from it and just being able to strictly watch hoops and report on what's happening?
Been able to do both, which is kind of cool. And honestly, like you kind of nailed it. Just being able to take out your bias and just watch hoops and just sort of write about what you're seeing is really empowering in some ways. So I honestly kind of enjoy just writing about a team that I'm have a more neutral perspective on. I still do, I guess, have some bias towards the Timberwolves or whatever. I guess they're my second favorite team now. And I get maybe attached to some of the players when some of these trade rumors come up or whatever. But it's just a totally different level than being a fan of the Celtics for 15, 16 years. So yeah, I think that's a big positive, honestly, and it's cool because I feel like I know a little bit more about the league in general now that I'm writing for the Timberwolves.
So you're doing all this writing. You're working for Last Word. You're working for Fansided. How did the Castles cast come about? Because I feel like writing and podcasting are like opposite ends of the spectrum. So how did you bridge the gap?
Podcasting was always I kind of said earlier I didn't know what avenue I wanted to go down, but podcasting in particular was something that always kind of intrigued me. And it was something, especially like throughout college, I was always like, damn, I kind of want to start a podcast. I kind of want to start a podcast. I didn't know exactly what the format I wanted it to be or anything like that. But especially once I had a little bit of experience as a writer, and I was sort of connected to a lot of different writers and content creators like yourself, stuff like that. I was like, I think it would be a really cool format if I sort of had one or two guests on every episode and we just talked about basketball primarily. And that was something I really wanted to do. And then going into my second semester, I guess my last semester in college as a senior, there was a class where it was like intro to podcasting or something like that, and it was a class that I needed a credit for as a communication major, and I was like, okay, that sounds like a great excuse to start a podcast, quite frankly. So I took that class essentially to start the podcast. It really wasn't a class that like, oh, you have to upload stuff to Spotify or YouTube or whatever. But we were learning sort of how to do that and what goes into making a good podcast. So I just sort of saw that as an opportunity to kickstart this experience as being a podcaster. And like you said, it is very different writing and podcasting, but I do feel like sort of my skills as a writer have translated into podcasting because I was already sort of thinking about the game on an analytical level. And then as a podcaster, I feel like that's helped me use my personality a little bit more in my writing because writing, especially early on, like I'll be honest, some of my content was pretty vanilla and it really wasn't like my opinion as much. It was just like straight facts. And like reading some of it back, it can be a little bit boring. So I feel like once I started podcasting, that really helped me like, oh, you have real opinions, lean into that a little bit more, lean into your personality a little bit more. And I feel like that's sort of uplifted my writing as well.
I'm kind of curious what it's like for you now that you're getting paid to watch basketball for, I mean, like brass tack, that's what we're doing. Being able to write about the Timberwolves versus like an off day for them where you're getting to view a game casually, Suns and the Warriors or whoever the case is. What would you say is the biggest difference and the biggest similarity between those two things?
That's a good question. I would say like when I'm watching Timberwolves games, the biggest thing is like that I've noticed, and even though I was writing for the Celtics at Last Word, this wasn't something that was always like top of mind because I was writing like 3 or 4 articles a week instead of 3 or 4 articles a day. But yeah, the biggest thing when I'm watching Timberwolves games, I'm like thinking of content a lot. Not just for myself, but I also have a handful of contributors that I give topics to. So that's a big part of my job is just thinking of content, and I am thinking about it very analytically, obviously. I feel like that's something that sort of translates to every game. But yeah, I'm thinking about content a lot, and I'm trying to create a list of 5 to 6 topics to throw out after most games to my contributors, and then sort of plan ahead for the next day what I'm going to write about. And then yeah, just when I'm watching regular game, I feel like I wouldn't say it's like any more or less enjoyable. It's just a lot more pure, if that makes sense. I'm just sort of watching the game, trying to find teams that I just haven't watched as much. I try to balance it out as much as possible. I mean, if there's a super intriguing matchup around the league, I'm not just gonna be like, damn, I've watched the Spurs a lot. I'm not gonna watch them. Because like teams like the Spurs and Rockets are just objectively more fun than a team like the Brooklyn Nets or something like that. Trying to find things that interest me around the league and just watch it. I feel like it's just a little bit more simplistic when it's not the team I write for, the team I'm a fan of. So, I mean, days like tonight, it's definitely enjoyable. But I have just as much fun generating content and really thinking a little bit deeper about the team that I write about every day.
So, what does a writing session look like for you, especially like the game recaps? Because this is in no way the same thing, but it's really the only thing I compare it to. I do game recaps for West Virginia University, and for me, it's more of a flow. Like I'm writing things as they happen and reacting to them like as they happen. Is it like that for you? Do you watch the whole thing, just taking notes, and then this like big conglomerate at the end? Like, what is that like for you?
So at Fansided, what we try to do is we avoid game recaps, avoid like game previews, stuff like that, and we really try to think about like how stuff relates to the future. And I mean, a perfect example would be yesterday, Johan Berenger getting his first like real NBA minutes. That was a huge content opportunity that we could spin 3 or 4 articles off of. So it's really just thinking about like how does this game or something that you saw from this game relate to the future, and honestly, I mean, sometimes I'll take notes. I would say it's kind of occasionally. I feel like I'm pretty good at like mentally keeping track of stuff and then going back to it afterwards, whether it be like content ideas or stuff that I noticed. So yeah, it's just sort of thinking about like, hey, what's a bigger picture idea that we can take out of this game and then spin into an article.
When you are spending a lot of time writing or podcasting, is it more difficult now to keep up with the rest of the league? Do you find it easier now that you're kind of ingrained in the culture, or is it more difficult because you're like plugging up all your time with podcasting or writing?
I would honestly say it's pretty. I guess it's easier at the end of the day, especially because I'm not like sitting in class, and I don't have like as many social commitments as I had the last 4 years in college and stuff like that. And also at Fansided, we have a Slack channel which is really helpful. So people will send like any news, and we also have an entire Google sheet of like articles that are recommended by our editors. So just skimming through that, and then I really do try to just read like a bunch of different sites, whether it be fan-sided sites or I read The Athletic a lot, stuff like that, just to keep up with the league. So I do almost find it easier, especially because, well, my primary job is to cover the Timberwolves. I do think it's sort of my job to cover the entire league, especially when I'm still writing 20 or so articles a month for the homepage, mostly about the NBA. So yeah, I do find it a little bit easier, especially now that it's like this is my real job, just to keep up with the NBA. And another thing I like to do a lot is listen to podcasts. I probably listen to like 4 or 5 different podcasts every day. Most of them are about the NBA, some NFL, some just random stuff. But yeah, I do find it a little bit easier to keep up with just the league in general now that it's like my sole focus almost.
What's the Timberwolves hive mind like right now with the Ja Morant buzz? Are we pro Ja Morant coming to Minnesota? Are we anti? Do we not want nothing to do with it? Like, what's the status there?
Quote Anthony Edwards on this one. Hell nah. No, we don't want Ja. I mean, especially like I wouldn't be opposed to a point guard upgrade. I mean, obviously you look at a point guard room of Mike Conley, Bones Highland, and Rob Dillingham, and that's probably not championship caliber, quite frankly. But I don't think they need a big swing type of guy. And based off some of the reporting, I would consider it highly unlikely that they do go down that Ja road or even a road like a LaMelo Ball or Darius Garland. Any of those sort of higher salary players, it's really tricky, especially because the Timberwolves are like just under the second apron. It's really tricky because they'd have to give up multiple rotational players, and for a team that already lacks depth, I just don't think that's ideal. If I'm looking at trade candidates, I'd look at a guy like Trey Jones on the Bulls, Jose Alvarado on the Pelicans. I'll bring up another Bull because I know you like this guy too. Javon Carter would be a guy I'd look at. Chris Dunn on the Clippers. I feel like there's a lot of just lower end targets that could still make a really strong impact. Even a guy that's on more of like a mid tiered salary, like a Colin Sexton, I think would be a really interesting option. Dennis Schroeder. I think there's a lot of options that wouldn't cause the Timberwolves to sort of break the bank. And I mean, with Ja specifically, the lack of shooting, the lack of defense, the lack of maturity, I want nothing to do with him, quite frankly.
I said Javon Carter to the Timberwolves as a bit the first time, and a buddy of mine, Riley, is also a Timberwolves fan, and I sent it to him again as a bit. But the more I thought about it, it's like, wow, that really would make sense. A defensive unit of Javon Carter, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and then whoever you want to put there, whether it's Nas or Julius Randle, whoever. Who's stopping that? Nobody is. That's the best defense in the league by a pretty wide margin, and I literally can't get off of it now. If Javon Carter doesn't get traded from the Bulls to the Timberwolves, I think I might just have to go to Chicago and start a riot. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, no, that's definitely valid. I mean, I really like his fit, and this, especially for this Timberwolves team, I would really try to target a defensive-minded guy. That's been their identity over the past few years. But I mean, in terms of your boy Javon, if he doesn't get traded to a team like the Timberwolves, hopefully for his sake, Kobe White or like Ayo Dosunmu gets traded so he can have a little bit more minutes with the Bulls.
Something's got to give. I tell you that. I've got one last question for you before we kind of transition into a little game and then we start plugging all your stuff. Who is your white whale for a podcast guest? Just put it out in either. Who do you want on the Castles cast?
Shit, I'd have to say my boy Chris Paul. That's my favorite athlete of all time. Yeah, I'd love to have Chris Paul on the podcast. Always trying to find ways to bring him up. I mean, especially on the podcast. Not super relevant to like the Timberwolves or anything, so I can't really bring him up a ton while I'm writing. But yeah, I always try to bring him up somehow on the podcast. Often have a Chris Paul jersey behind me, and he's really, if I had to say a player who got me into the game of basketball, it would be Chris Paul. I mean, just from a young age, for whatever reason, I just sort of gravitated towards him. I think it was just the ability to control the game while being like the shortest guy in the court 90% of the time. Really drew me to him, and yeah, he's definitely my basketball idol. So CP, hop on the pod. I think would have a great combo.
Well, you started watching basketball. Such a good time for him, too. Just being able to orchestrate that Lob City Clippers offense, objectively, at least in my opinion, the most fun offense to watch maybe ever. So, yeah, 100%. Chris Paul, I think, would be a great guest on a pod. And Chris, I know you're listening. Join the podcast. I can get you in touch with Eamon. Whatever you need, bud. Again, I wanted to thank you for coming on. We've been mutual for a really long time. Love that we were able to do this. Before we start plugging all your stuff, I do have a little game for you. Just like a this or that. I'm going to give you some scenarios and you can only pick one. But if you're ready, I'm ready.
Let's go.
So again, you can only pick one. Are you only a writer or are you only a podcaster?
I mean, shit, I gotta go with the money. I gotta go with the writing. I ain't gonna lie.
Whatever gets me the bread. I love it.
And I mean, genuinely, I do feel like writing is more of like my career per se. Like if podcasting, I can get it to a point where I do make money from it. That's great, but it's more so just something I do for fun, almost like a hobby, a side job, I guess, if you will. But yeah, writing, I would say I'm a little bit more passionate about. I think I'm a little better at it, honestly, and it does have that financial benefit.
Speaking of the podcast, would you rather have an exclusive podcast interview with Anthony Edwards or the man behind you, Jaylen Brown?
I gotta go with JB, honestly. No disrespect to Ant. I just feel like JB, we could have a more like meaningful conversation. And I've been watching him for longer. He's been my favorite Celtics player really since like his second or third season. So I've been riding with him for a while. And yeah, I think JB, if if I didn't say Chris Paul or I was thinking like Michael Jordan, but that would kind of be a crazy one. I would say he'd be like at least on that Mount Rushmore of like white whale guests. So definitely JB.
And then the last one. Imagine the 2024 championship Celtics team. You have the option to sign one of these players just at the end of the bench, just so they can get a ring. Do you give that contract to Marcus Smart or do you give it to Isaiah Thomas?
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. Let me clarify. Is he just purely going to be at the end of the bench?
I would think so because in my head everything else is the same, right? So Drew Holiday's still there. You have like the core 8 of that rotation. I'm not. I'll be honest. I love Marcus Smart. I would die for Marcus Smart right this second. I don't know if he really has a role on that team if Drew Holiday's still there. So I think, yeah, I think he kind of has to be a little bit of a bench warmer.
I don't know, man. I think I gotta. That's such a tough one. I think I gotta give it to Marcus though. Just based on the fact that he was there for a little bit longer than IT. Those IT years were truly special, and he's easily one of my favorite Celtics of all time, so I don't want that to be like a slight at him. But I mean, just seeing that Marcus was on the team in 22 that made the finals, and then he was on the team in 23, which potentially could have won a finals as well. And then they trade him and immediately win the championship. I feel like he just stings a little bit more. So I'd have to go with Marcus.
I don't have an answer, really. I love both of them a little too much to give an answer, but I'm glad I was able to make you give one. Again, really appreciate you hopping on. Love your work. Love that we're able to collab like this. We've talked about the Castles Cast. We've talked about your work writing. Where else can people find you, and what else are you working on?
You can follow me on Twitter at Eamon Castles. I'm sure my name will be up here somewhere. And then, yeah, just search my name, Duncan with Wolves, fansided.com, as well as Ebony Bird, where I write about the Ravens. But Duncan with Wolves is definitely my primary site where I write about the Timberwolves multiple times a day. And then, yeah, like Roundball said, just catch me on the podcast as well. The Castles Cast, new episodes every Friday. Appreciate you having me on the show.
All your links are going to be in the description. While you're down there looking at his links, check some of my links out. Got links to everything you could possibly imagine: Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm literally everywhere. I also have a Discord community that I would love for you to be a part of. That's going to do it for Eamon. That's going to do it for me. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. We'll see you in the next one.
Barely scraping by. Trying to stop puffing. I'm trying to be one of the greats.